let's jump into this right away. Numbers 13, 14, and 15, and 19, 23, and 24. And by the way, I handpicked these certain problems for certain reasons, okay? But anyways, the directions are saying to solve by completing the square. Now, one of the directions say to check your answers graphically. I'm not worried about that now. We will learn about that later. Just not on this lesson during this homework assignment, okay? Alright, let's solve this equation, completing the square. That's a method. We're going to learn many methods during this chapter. The method today that we are using is complete the square, okay? Alright, step number one, move all the x squared and x terms to the left side and all constant terms to the other side or to the right side. So here's an x squared term, here's the x term, they're all on the left side. Bring your 24 over and make it negative. And now all of your constant terms are on the right side of the equal sign, okay? So we have x squared positive 10x equals negative 24. Now, I have a question for you. Are all of my x squared and x terms on the left side? Yes. Are all of my constant terms on the right side? Yes. Step 2, divide the equation by the x squared coefficient. Now here's your x squared term. What is the coefficient? 1. So there's really no need to do step 2. Now if you want to divide everything by 1, there's nothing wrong with that. But you'll get out what you started with, so there's no need to really do that. Step 2, take the x term coefficient. Now where's my x term? Here it is. What's the coefficient? 10. Take the x term coefficient and do what to it? Multiply it by 1/2. That gives you 5. And then square it. That gives you 25. So did we do step 3? Yes. Never make it a decimal, by the way. Never. It should be a fraction or a whole number. So I'll put 25 right here. So that's finished. I took the x coefficient, multiplied it by 1/2, and squared it. Take the number from step 3, which was 25. Take the number from step 3 and add it to both sides of the equation. So I'm going to add 25 to the left side right here. I'm also going to add 25 to this. Negative 24 plus 25 is 1. So I added 25 to both sides. Step 2. Step 2. Wow. Step 5. Factor the left side by using the method or the shortcut you've been shown, okay? So we put 2 sets of parentheses, alright? In your head, you take the square root of this. The square root of x squared is x. Put it here and here. In your mind, take the square root of this term. The square root of 25 is 5. Put it here and here. This sign here is positive, whatever this sign here, whatever this middle sign is. Out of your 3 terms here, whatever your middle sign is the sign you will put here and here. And then one more thing to do, and step 5 is completed. You have 2 matching parentheses, so you write them as 1 parentheses squared. Step 6, take the square root of both sides. Okay, I want to get rid of this power too. So if I take the square root of something squared, the square root and the squared cancel each other out, and you're just left with the base, which is x plus 5. However, you cannot take the square root of one side without taking the square root of the other side. So positive, negative, square root of 1. Now the square root of 1 is 1, obviously, because 1 times 1 is 1. So the square root of 1 is 1, so I have plus negative 1. Next, solve for x. Bring your 5 over and make it negative. Positive negative 1, negative 5. Now, whenever your entire square root is solvable, like you had right here, the square root of 1 is 1, and you come down to the end like this, it is required by me as your teacher. I want you to simplify as far as possible. So here's what you really have. You have a positive 1, negative 5, and then you have a negative 1, negative 5. You see, students, the 5 doesn't change. There's no plus x minus in front of the 5. There's only a negative. So the 5 is going to be negative no matter what, but the 1 is going to be positive in one scenario, and it's going to be negative in the other scenario. So combine these two numbers and you get negative 4. Combine these two numbers, you get negative 6. And guess what? Those are your two answers. Are you saying, Mr. Earhart, that both of those numbers satisfy the equation? Most definitely. Most definitely. Okay, so your answers would be negative 4 and negative 6. Quadratic equations will sometimes have no solution. We haven't gotten to those yet. We will. Sometimes they have one solution. Sometimes they have two solutions. They will never have more than two. Never. A quadratic equation will never have more than two solutions. Number 14. Step 1, move all the x squared and x terms to the left side, all constant terms to the right side. So I'm going to leave my x squared here, my negative 4x here. Bring my 3 over, make it a negative 3. Are all of my x squared and x terms on the left side? All of them? Yes. Are all of my constant terms on the right side? Yes. Step 2, divide by the coefficient, the x squared coefficient. Well, there's a 1 here, so there's really no need to divide everything by 1. Okay, so we're not going to do that. It's finished already. Step 3, take the x term coefficient. Here it is. Here's your x term. Take the coefficient, which is 4. Now, by the way, I taught you in your notes not to worry about this sign when it comes to step 3. However, if you want to take the sign, that's fine. But it doesn't matter, because in the end, you're going to square it. And when you square a positive, you get out a positive. And when you square a negative, you get out a negative. So the sign is really irrelevant, okay? But that's up to you. Number 3, take the x term coefficient. I'm going to use 4, not negative 4. If you want to use negative 4, feel free to. It's fine. Multiply it by 1/2. And you'll get 2. Now, by the way, if you left this negative, you get out negative 2. But then we're going to do what to it? Square it. So when you square a negative, you get a positive either way. That's why it doesn't matter, okay? Alright, now I'm going to square this, like it says to do here. And 2 times 2 is 4. So there's my special number, 4. Alright? Step 4, take the number from step 3 and add it to both sides. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. X squared, negative 4x, positive 4. Add 4 to this side, negative 3, positive 4 is 1. Next step, factor the left side. Okay, here we go. Put 2 parentheses. The square root of x squared is x. Put it here and here. The square root of 4 is 2. Put it here and here. Your middle sign is negative, so put a negative here and a negative here. And then bring down your positive 1. Now, we're not quite done with step 5 yet. You have 2 matching parentheses, so we're going to write them as 1 parentheses with a power of 2. Now we're done with step 5. Step 6, take the square root of both sides. Well, the square root of 1, that's pretty simple. We're going to put positive, negative, square root of 1. We're also going to take the square root of the left side. Now remember, when you take the square root of something squared, it's like the squared and the square root cancel out. You're just left with the base, which is x minus 2, equals positive, negative. The square root of 1 is 1. Now bring the negative 2 over and make it positive. Okay, bring the negative 2 over and make it positive. Now, on a test or a quiz, I would take points off if you left your answer like this. Do not leave your answer like this, okay? The radical is totally gone, so we can simplify this further. So we really have a positive 1 and a positive 2, and a negative 1 and a positive 2, okay? Combine 3, combine 1. So there's your 2 answers, 3 and 1, okay? So am I telling you that if you substitute these 2 numbers in right here, your 2 answers, you would get out a true statement? Sure. for x. 3 squared is 9. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. Positive 3 equals 0. Combine these numbers and you get 0 equals 0. Okay? It does work. Alright, number 15. Step 1. Move all the x squared terms to one side, to the left side, and constant terms to the other. So bring your negative 15 over and make it a positive 15. There we go. Are all of my x squared and x terms on one side? Yes. Are all of my constant terms on the right side? Yes. Step 2, divide the entire equation by the x squared coefficient. Well, the x squared coefficient is 1, so there's no need to do that. Step 3, take the x term coefficient, which is 2 right here. Multiply it by 1/2 and then square it. I'm not worried about the sign. So my x term coefficient is 2. Multiply it by 1/2. And you get 1. Alright? Then you square it. Multiply by 1/2, then square it. When you square 1, you get 1. 1 times 1 is 1. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides. Okay? Alright, moving on. Step 4. Take the number from step 3, which was 1, and add it to both sides. So add 1 to the left side, and you'll have this. Add 1 to the right side, and you will get this right here. Step 5. Factor the left side. Okay, we know how to do this. Put our 2 parentheses. Take the square root of this in your mind. You will get x. Put an x here and an x here. Take the square root of this number here. The square root of 1 is 1. Put a 1 here and a 1 here. Now here's your middle term. Always take this sign, whatever it is. And it goes here and here. And there we go. Now there's one more thing to do before step 5 is finished. Notice we have matching parentheses. We're going to want to write those matching parentheses once with the power of 2. Okay? Like that. Now, having said that, step 5 is done. Now step 6, take the square root of both sides. Alright? So I'm going to do the square root of the right side. That's easy enough. Positive, negative square root of 16. But I must also do the square root of the left side. Okay? Now, whenever you take the square root of something squared, let's like the square and the square root cancel out, so you're left with the base, which is x minus 1. The square root of 16 is 4, so I have positive negative 4. Okay? Now bring the negative 1 over, and we're going to make it a positive 1. Alright? Bring that over, and make it a positive 1. So there we go. X equals all of this. Now, because the square root is gone, I have a whole number here. I'm going to go ahead and simplify it a little further, so I'll take my positive 4 first. And then positive 1. And I'll take my negative 4 and my positive 1. Okay? Simplify this, you get 5. Simplify this, you get negative 3. So there's your 2 answers. 5, negative 3. Okay? Obviously, it doesn't matter which number you write first. They're both the answers, okay? Now, the next bit will be a little more challenging, so that'll be good for you guys. Let's take a look now at numbers 19, 23, and 24. Okay, step 1, move all the x squared terms to one side and constant terms to the other side. Okay, easy enough. Bring the negative 5 over and make it positive. 2x squared, negative 6x equals 5. Step 2, divide the entire equation by the x squared coefficient. So the x squared term is here, the coefficient is 2. So we're going to divide everything by 2. Everything by 2. Every term by 2. Cancel leaves you with x squared, negative 3x. Because you have a negative divided by a positive equals 5 over 2. Now remember, we don't want any decimals. Leave everything in fractions or whole numbers. Okay? Now, step 2 is done. Step 3 says take the x squared, take the x term coefficient. Well, here's my x term. Here's the coefficient. Multiply it by 1/2 and then square it. So here's my x term coefficient. I'm not going to worry about the sign. 3 times 1/2 gives me 3 over 2. And then you square that and you get, well, 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 2 is 4, so 9 over 4. So that's the number I got from step 3. My special number is 9/4. Take the number from step 3 and add it to both sides of the equation. Okay, fair enough. minus 3x equals, or plus, excuse me, plus 9/4 equals, now we're taking 5/2 plus 9/4, okay? You should get 19 over 4, okay? 19 over 4. Use a calculator if you need to. I hate the fact that you might need to do that at this age in your high school, lives, but if you struggle with fractions, feel free to use a calculator here on that, okay? So now we're done with that step. Moving on to our next step. We're going to factor the left side of the equation. Now here's how we do it. We're going to do a shortcut here, put our two parentheses. And take the square root of the first term in your head. The square root of x squared is x. Put it here and here. Take the square root of your last term. Now think about the square root of 9/4. It's not that difficult, guys. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 4 is 2. So 3/2. 3/2, okay? Your middle sign here is negative, so put a negative and a negative. Now next, we have two parentheses that are identical. So we are going to write this with a power of 2. Okay? Now, step 5 is totally done. Step 6, take the square root of both sides. Okay? So the square root of this left side, x negative 3/2 quantity squared, equals positive negative the square root of 19 over 4. Now, whenever you take the square root of something squared, they cancel out. You're left with just the base. I'm going to write that up here. You're left with x negative 3/2 equals, now be careful here. We do not know the square root of 19. I understand that, okay? But we do know the square root of 4. And the square root of 4 is 2. So put a 2 down here. Do not put it under a radical like this. That is incorrect. The square root of 4 is not the square root of 2. The square root of 4 is 2. Now to finish this up very quickly, we simply take the 3/2 and bring it over to the other side and make it positive, okay? So we bring it over and make it positive, and now we're done. To be honest, I've told you this. Really, the radical should come second, okay? Properly speaking, it should look like this. To be honest with you, now I'll accept this, but it should look like this, okay? So there's your answer. All right. 3 over 2 plus minus the square root of 19 over 2. All right. Moving on to number 23. Okay, step 1. Move all the x squared terms to one side, and x squared terms and x terms to the left side, and constant terms to the right side. Okay, here we go. Let's bring the 9 over, make it a negative 9. Now, are all of my x squared and x terms on the left side? Yes. Are all of my constant terms on the right side? Yes. Step 2, divide the entire equation by the x squared coefficient. Okay, x squared coefficient. So here we go. I'm going to divide everything by negative 5 because my x squared coefficient is negative 5. Divide everything by negative 5, okay? These cancel, leaving you with x squared. These cancel. Now be careful, you have a negative over negative, so they cancel, leaving you with a positive x equals negative over negative is positive 9/5. So I divided everything like step 2 said to do by the x squared coefficient. Now step 3 is take the x term coefficient. Now look at your x term. You can't see the coefficient. What is it, guys? It's a 1, right? I'm sure it is. Take the x term coefficient, multiply it by 1/2, and then square it. So the x term coefficient is 1. So take 1, multiply it by 1/2 is 1/2, and then square it, and you get 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4, you get 1/4. Okay? So my number from number 3 here is 1/4. Let's not forget that, 1/4. Okay? Now moving on to step 4. Take the number from step 3 and add it to both sides of the equation. So here we go. I'm going to add 1/4 to both sides of the equation. X squared plus side over here. Okay, now we're going to factor the left side, which is step number 5. Okay, factor the left side. And so here we go. Put two sets of parentheses equals 41 over 20. And here we go. Remember what I've taught you. In your mind, you take the square root of this term. The square root of x squared is x. In your mind, to take the square root of this term, the square root of 1/4 is, well, the square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2, so the square root of 1/4 is 1/2. Your middle sign is positive, so put a positive sign here and a positive sign here. Okay? Next step. Not next step. To finish step 5, we've now got to write our matching parentheses as one parentheses with a power of 2. Alright? And let's fix that real quick with the power of 2. Okay? So what we're going to have to do is now move on to step 6. Take the square root of both sides. Okay? Take the square root of both sides. So take the square root of this side, but I must also take the square root of the right side. Okay, now, whenever you take the square root of something squared, they kind of cancel out. Is one way to look at it. You're left with the base, which is x positive 1/2. Okay, equals, now, do we know the square root of 41? No. Do we know the square root of 20? No. So it stays 41 over 20. Okay, and that's it. I mean, step 6 is done. Take the square root of both sides. Now lastly, step 7, solve for x. So bring the 1/2 over. And when you do that, you're going to make it a negative 1/2. Bring the 1/2 over and make it a negative 1/2. And that is the answer. Now, like I've said before, I would recommend you put the constant term first. Your 1/2 is negative, then positive negative, the radical term last, like this. Okay, but I will accept either one of these two answers, either one. Alright, moving on to 24. Step 1, move all the x squared and x terms to the left side and constant terms to the right side. Alright, that's easy enough to do. We should be pretty good at that by now. 4x squared minus 16x minus 10, or sorry about that, not minus 10, equals a positive 10. There, step 1 is done. We moved all the x squared and x terms to the left side and constant terms to the right side. Step 2, divide by the x squared coefficient. Well, here's my x squared term. The coefficient's 4. So divide everything by 4. These cancel, leaving you with x squared. A negative over a positive is negative. 16x divided by 4 would be 4x. 10 divided by 4 would be 5/2. No decimals. Okay, guys? Keep everything whole numbers or fractions. Now, step 3. Take the x term coefficient, 4, multiply it by 1/2, and then square it. So my x term coefficient is 4. If you want to use negative 4, that's fine. Multiply it by 1/2, that would give you a 2. And then square that answer, and you will get 4. Okay? So step 3 is done. I've done all the stuff they asked me to do to the x coefficient, and I got 4. Now, step 4 says take this number from step 3, which is 4, and add it to both sides of the equation. So x squared negative 4x positive 4 equals 5/2 plus 4. Alright, so we're going to get 13, I believe. 13 over 2 if you combine those. Okay, 13 over 2. Would that be correct? I wonder if I've made a mistake here somewhere. Okay, students, moving on. I don't think I've made a mistake. I can't find it. If I did, I hope that I've not, but my answer's going to be a little different than theirs, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Okay, alright. So, 5 over 2 plus 4 is 13 over 2. Now, step 4 is done. Step 5, factor the left side. So here we go. Write your two parentheses. Take the square root of this term in your head. The square root of x squared is x. Put it here and here. Take the square root of this term in your head. The square root of 4 is 2. Put a 2 here and a 2 here. Whatever your middle sign is goes here and here. So nothing earth-shattering. Okay? Now, next we have two parentheses that are identical, okay? So we're going to write them as one parentheses with a power of 2, okay? Now, step 5, students, is completely done. Step 6, take the square root of both sides, okay? Now, square root of the right side, of course, would look like this. And now we're going to take the square root of this side here. Like this here. Now, the square root of the right side, there's really nothing we can do. However, the square root of the left side, whenever you take the square root of something squared, it's kind of like they cancel out. You're left with the base. Okay? So there's my answer so far. Now, the last thing I want to do is step 7, solve for x. So I bring the 2 over and I make it a positive 2. Okay? Now, in doing that, sorry students, I want to show you something. If I can get this right. Now, make that a positive 2. Now, like I've told you, really being proper, the constant, the whole number, not the whole number, the rational number comes first. Irrational comes second. Now, look at their answer they have. They're so a little different. However, I want to challenge you to practice something with your calculator. Take the square root of 26 with your calculator if you would, please. The square root of 26 is 5.099 and then divide it by 2 and you'll get this decimal. You'll get this entire fraction right here equals 2.55 if you round correctly, 2.549509757, so 2.55. Now, type this fraction in your calculator, you get the exact same thing. Take the square root and use parentheses. Put parentheses around 13 divided by 2, then close the parentheses. So you're taking the square root of this entire fraction and you'll get the exact same thing, 2.549509757. Now, if you want to know where they got this from, I'll show you real quick. But if you don't care, then go ahead and fast forward the video to the next problem. This is your answer. It's sufficient. I would accept this answer also. But if you want to know where they got it from, I'll show you. They just simply took this fraction here inside the parentheses and multiplied the top and the bottom by 2. 26 over 4. Now 26 over 4 is the exact same thing as 13 over 2. Now, do you know the square root of 26? No. But you do know the square root of 4, which is 2. And that's where they got this. Now, why did they do that? No idea. No idea whatsoever. But that's why these two fractions are equivalent. Okay? Alright, moving on. Number 25. The directions for 25 and 26 say to find the dimensions of the figure. Now, when they say find the dimensions, they're not saying solve for x. I mean, don't misunderstand me. We're going to solve for x. But after we solve for x, we're not finished. They want us to find the length of the base and the length of the height. Okay? So we first must find x. Now here's how we're going to do it. They tell us the area of the triangle is 12. See it right here. So here's our formula. Area of a triangle equals what? 1/2 times the base times the height. Got it? Okay, so for area I'm going to put 12. For 1/2 I'm going to put 1/2. For base I'm going to put x because my base has a length of x. For height I'm going to put x plus 2 because I have a height of x plus 2. Now, throwing out the window for a second that we've been solving quadratic equations, just pretend that you're not thinking about linear, quadratic, any certain type of equation. You're just solving this. Okay? Let's say it's a beautiful Saturday afternoon, and because you love math so much, you just sat down and started solving equations just for the fun of it. Okay? So, I've taught you to always simplify both sides first, so I cannot simplify the left side, but I can simplify the right side. 1/2 times x is 1/2 x. 1/2 times x is 1/2 x. And then take times x is 1 half x squared. And then 1 half x plus 2. Well, 1 half times 2 is 1. So you have 1x. Or just x. Now, students, what you should notice is right away, as soon as you simplify both sides of this equation, you have a quadratic equation. You should see that right away, guys. You should be to the point now where you're realizing, okay, I have a quadratic equation. I have a power of 2. Now, I have taught you 2 ways to solve quadratic equations, right? The square root method, right? And the CTS method. Now, I told you, if you listened to the last video, I taught you very well. You cannot use the square root method if you have a b term slash x term, whatever you want to call it. Well, we have an x term, guys, right there. You can call that a b term or an x term. Doesn't matter. We've got one. So you cannot use the square root method. I wish we could. That's the easiest method, but we don't. So we're going to have to use CTS. So step 1, get all of your x squared terms and your x terms on the left side. And get your constant terms on the right side. Now, if I know you guys are probably thinking, Mr. Earhart, can I just leave it like this and do all of my work over here? Yes, you could. I just like to teach it one way. And so that's what I've chosen to do, okay? Alright. So my 1 half becomes negative, my x becomes negative, my 12 becomes negative. So is step 1 done? Yes, all of my x squared and x terms are on the left side. All of my constant terms are on the right side. Next step, divide by your x squared coefficient. My x squared coefficient is negative 1 half, so I'm going to divide everything by negative 1 half. Now, these cancel, leaving you with x squared, okay? This is a negative 1 right here. A negative divided by a negative is positive. Now, 1 divided by 1 half is 2. If you did not know that, use a calculator, okay? 1 divided by 1 half is 2. A negative divided by a negative is positive. 12 divided by 1 half is 24. Okay? 24. Now, step 2 is completed. Next step, take here, and this should have an x right here. I apologize, students. This x right here should have come down. Now, take your x coefficient 2, multiply it by 1 half. Gives you 1, and then square it, and you get 1. So we're going to add 1 to both sides. That's the next step. Add the number to both sides. So add 1 to the left side, add 1 to this side, and we get this. Next step, factor the left side. So let's do some factoring, shall we? Here we go. Put 2 parentheses. The square root of x squared is x. That goes here and here. The square root of 1 is 1. That goes here and here. Your middle term is positive. So that goes here and here. Okay, students, now we have 2 parentheses that are identical. So we're going to write them as 1 parentheses with the power of 2. Alright? Next step, we're going to take the square root of both sides, okay? So we take the square root of this side and positive, negative, the square root of this side, okay? Now the square root of 25 is 5. There we go. And the square root of something squared is this right here. X, positive 1. Last step, students, bring the positive 1 over and make it a negative 1. And so we're looking pretty good. X equals positive negative 5 minus 1. Now, whenever the square roots totally cancel like this, you can go ahead and write it positive 5, negative 1, and then negative 5, negative 1. Okay? Combine these 2 numbers, you get 4. Combine these 2 numbers, you get a negative 6. Now, there's your 2 answers for x. But nowhere did the problem ask you to solve for x. Nowhere. Okay, students, sorry I had to pause the video for a second. Okay, now students, nowhere do the directions say to solve for x. Now, obviously, to find the dimensions we had to. But we're not going to use both of these answers, guys. Think about it. What is your base? X. How can you have negative 6 for a base? That's not possible. So, we're going to use 4. So my base equals 4 and my height equals 6. I put a 4 here for x. If I put a 4 here for x, 4 plus 2 is 6. So there we go. My base is 4. My height is 6. Okay. Alright, one more problem and we're finished. Number 26. And here we go. Okay, find the dimensions of this rectangle. So we have a lot of work to do. Okay, guys, here we go. Now, first of all, they tell me the area of a rectangle is 160 feet. Now, the area of a rectangle is length times the width. Okay? So for area, I'm going to substitute 160. And for length, I'm going to put x. And for width, I'm going to put 1/4 x positive 3. Okay? Now, let's solve this equation. Step 1 is to simplify both sides. Obviously, I cannot simplify a positive 160. But I can simplify this side over here. Take your x and multiply it through. X times 1/4 x is 1/4 x squared. X times 3 is positive 3x. Okay? Now as soon as I simplify, I realize I have a quadratic equation, and I cannot use the square root method because I have an x term or a b term. So I'm going to have to solve this using the CTS method. So step 1, get all of your x squared terms on the left side and your x terms on the left side. So bring these two terms over. Get your constant terms on the right side. Now if you want to leave your constant term over here and these over here, that's totally understandable. Again, I just try to teach it one way, but that's totally fine. Okay, so there we go. I've got my x squared and my x terms on the left side, my constant terms on the right side. Step 2, divide by your x squared coefficient, negative 1/4 in this case. So divide every term by a negative 1/4. Now, these cancel here. I'm left with x squared. A negative divided by a negative is positive. 3 divided by 1/4 is 12. So positive 12x. Over here, a negative divided by a negative is positive. And 160 divided by 1/4 is 24,640. Alright. Now, step 2 has been done. I have and hold on 1 second here. 0, 24, 640. Okay, moving on. Step 2 is done. Now step 3 says to take your x coefficient, in this case it's 12, divide it or multiply it by 1/2, and then square it, and that gives you 36. So we're going to add that to both sides. So x squared, positive 12x, positive 36, equals, now we're going to add 36 to this side, and we're going to get 676. Okay. Next step, factor the left side. So let's clear off some space here. We're running out of room a little bit. Let's slide this over. Hopefully you're writing all this down, so it doesn't matter if I erase this stuff. And here we go. If you factor the left side, 2 parentheses, put 676. What's the square root of x squared? X, put it here and here. The square root of 36 is 6. Put it here and here. Middle term is positive, so put a positive and a positive. Okay? Now next, notice we have 2 matching parentheses. Okay? So because we have 2 matching parentheses, we're going to write 1 parentheses with the power of 2. Alright? Now we're totally done factoring it. Next step says take the square root of both sides. So square root of the right side, square root of the left side. Now over here, when you take the square root of something squared, you're left with just the base. On the right side, actually the square root of 676 is a perfect square. It's 26. So I have positive negative 26. Okay? Now, last step, bring your 6 over and make it a negative 6. So really, here's what x equals. X equals positive 26, negative 6, and a negative 26, negative 6. So for one answer, I'll get 20 for x. The other answer is negative 32. Sometimes you can have a negative answer, but let's look at the problem. The length is x, so that means the length is negative 32. That's not possible. So right away I can discard this answer. So x is 20, so my length is 20. Over here I have put 20 for x right here. 1/4 times 20 is 5. 5 plus 3 is 8. So my width has to be 8. So my dimensions are 8 by 20 or 20 by 8. And by the way, that makes sense because if you take 20 times 8, you get 160. And the area is supposed to be 160. Okay? Students, I really hope this homework help video has been a help to you. If you have any questions at all, do not hesitate to call or email.